Welcome back to Put It in Park, the podcast where we explore the intersections of parking, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Robert Wilson, and today we are joined by Courtney Cooper, the dynamic events and community manager at Parker Technology. Courtney plays a pivotal role in connecting people within the parking industry through events, podcasts, and community engagement, most importantly. Courtney, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today and talk a bit more. I know we talked briefly at Pi, so I'm excited for this expanded conversation.
Oh yeah, it was a much needed conversation. We got a little snippet at Pi, but today we're gonna really dive into it. So,
Yep.
Courtney, your background is very diverse. Can you share how you found your way into the world of parking? Everybody says that they get in here and then it's like, oh, I never left. But what is your journey like? And tell me how you ended up at Parker Technology.
Well, I think like everybody, it sort of fell into my lap. I was spending a summer, I wasn't working a corporate job at the time. I had resigned from a role and I had actually started a small business where I got to
Okay.
bake for a whole summer. And, at the time when you're working in your kitchen 24/7, you start to realize that maybe that's not the right path for me. So I started missing marketing a lot and I was looking into marketing roles here in Indianapolis. And then I saw Parker Technology and I interviewed with the team a handful of times. And I mean, they just treated me so well. They're an incredible group of people. So I've been at Parker now for I think a year and 7 months or so. It's been really fun.
That is so good to hear. So it seems like you also get into the culinary arts on the side too. Is that correct?
I do, yes. A lot of people outside of work know me as the baker. So
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, so that's cool how you ended up at Parker. Yeah, I was exploring the company and looking at the website. I just love like the people images that are on the website. It's so unapologetic and it's like, man, it would be great to work at Parker just from the photos that I'm seeing. So I wanted to know, transitioning into a niche parking technology company has its unique challenges. What were some of the initial hurdles that you faced, kind of having that diverse background in the realm of arts, also culinary arts? And what were some of the things that you had to go through as far as obstacles, but how did you overcome them?
that's a really good question. So I think the few biggest things that I've found is I remember the first day of my role. My supervisor, she sat me down and she had this big whiteboard and she tried to describe the parking industry. And she's writing a handful of acronyms on the board that at the time I really didn't understand because there's park systems, but it's spelled with a C and not a K, which confused me at the time. There's API integrations. There's so many different segments of people that we talk to, like municipalities, university, private operators. Even the concept of private operators confused me for a bit because, we all start as just the general public. We all start as parkers. And then once we're thrown into this industry, it really changes. So I'd say one of the two biggest challenges that I had was just understanding the scope of this industry and how many companies, and I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but how many technology companies, how many different types of organizations it takes to just run a parking facility in general. It truly takes a village. So that was my first difficulty. And then also, going to trade shows is one of the biggest parts of my role. I'm our community manager here. So, as I'm going to shows, just feeling a little bit like I don't know any of these people and they all know each other. So,
Right.
everybody knows each other at parking. So, then I guess it felt like I was chipping away at an ice block and trying to get to know people and trying to ingrain myself within a community where everybody already knows each other and you go to conferences and you want to talk to your parking friends, not this newbie who doesn't know what a park system is. So that was a big hurdle, but now a year and some change later, I feel like I'm definitely ingrained with the community.
Gotcha. No, that's great to hear. Just a year and some change, and you already are making big changes with the podcast that you're doing. You're also over the community events and outreach. I think you all go to 20 trade shows a year, so Big ups to you, honestly. Just doing that all in a year and 7 months, that's really inspiring. And
Thank
I really got to like understand what you're saying as far as like, oh my gosh, how did we figure out all these acronyms, like you said about parks? It's so many acronyms, dwell times, occupancy, just making sure you have the right names for parking administrators, parking directors. Just wanted to make sure that you're catering to each niche, like the university space, municipality space that you mentioned. How long do you feel like that learning curve was? Because even taking it back to like class days, just on like how I got started and thinking about parking operations and also trying to figure out some of the jargon as an engineer. What was it like looking at that whiteboard from your supervisor? Did you feel overwhelmed? How did you end up making the journey, at the ideation phase of, where you were at, moving all the way to a year and 7 months? How did you just know, like, hey, I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna manage these events, I'm gonna create something great, and the people are gonna listen?
Mhm. Well, I think it's a really good question. I think when I first started my role, my supervisor or maybe somebody within my department said it would probably take a year to understand the scope of the industry, and I definitely think that that's true. And I'm still learning new things every day. I would say where I'm very lucky is that events and community, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what you're doing, I think everybody knows what a good experience looks like and what a bad experience looks like. So in terms of my role in general, I think it's very easy to want to create good experiences for everybody because that's just something that, as humans, I think we all learn to love and enjoy. And I throw a lot of happy hours. I throw a lot of otherwise dinner events, and it's very easy to translate that. But I'd also say, in terms of learning it all, it was a trial by fire for me. Um, I remember, I think it might have been 3 weeks within my role, maybe a month, where I was actually at my first conference and I was talking to people and I was talking to leads and I'm trying to wrap my head around how do I talk about this company when I feel like I can't talk about the industry itself. But then as I'm hearing my coworkers' conversations and how they talk about Parker technology and hearing the experiences of leads and customers and what they go through day to day, I think it's just listening and listening as much as I could. And I still do listen and I think that's how I learned more. It's just accepting when there's, okay, I don't have all of the answers, but I will figure it out. And admitting that to people is a lot stronger than just like making something up on the spot.
I love that. That's honestly what people need to. They need to receive that, honestly, just having that insight and just having their voices heard, honestly. So I just really enjoy that you just take the time to really stop, listen, and think about, okay, I may not have the answer, but guess what? I can definitely connect you to somebody that does have the answer. I think people will really appreciate that navigating in this parking industry. We recently connected at Pi, so I really feel what you're saying. That was my first trade show. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big shock. It's overwhelming, but it's good excitement. And people just take you in if you're really willing to learn about the industry of parking. And, as a young face like you and I, people are just really willing to help you out. So
Yes, I agree.
you talked about your role a little bit, but your role encompasses managing events, producing content, and fostering that community with the happy hours and the close-knit, intimate dinner events. Could you walk us through a day in the life of Courtney Cooper at Parker Technology?
Well, the thing I love about marketing and why I'm in marketing in the first place is because every day is totally different than the next day. So an example day, and this is what I did yesterday. I worked on a bunch of t-shirt designs, on designs for cookie tins, just project designs for promo for an upcoming user conference we had. And then I had a list that we received from a trade show we were attending. So I did a lot of data entry and making sure that we're talking to the right people when we go to trade shows. I edited a podcast episode that we're launching in 2 weeks, developed show notes, the whole 9 yards. I worked on an awards run of show for our upcoming conference. So just making sure that our speakers know what to talk about and and getting a point on that because we're trying to highlight a bunch of different people coming to our user conference and making sure that they feel appreciated. So, and that's just one day. So it really varies day by day. And then I might have a handful of meetings in general, but I just love that it's always different. Like podcast is probably it makes up 10% of my role, and then 40% goes to trade show logistics, another 40% goes to fusion, and then 30% goes to case studies, and then suddenly I'm over 100%. But it's all things that I enjoy.
That's so good. I can't believe you knocked all of that stuff out in one day. Y'all heard it here, folks. The parking professionals, we don't play. She knocked
No,
all of that out. So how do you kind of like classify like the order of importance? Like how do you know what swag to bring to trade shows? How do you know if people are going to resonate with, let's say, like phone chargers or air fresheners or the t-shirts that you're creating? How do you go about bringing the materials and knowing what is going to resonate most with your audience?
Well, there's sort of a note that our CEO, he always says, be a student of the game. So you're always learning, you're always taking in information. And I was lucky enough to work in the promotional product industry before starting here at Parker. But when we're going to shows and we see what people gravitate towards, and we're spinning our wheels, so people can select prizes, you can kind of see what people are like, no thanks, and then they just leave it behind, or that there's a lot of excitement behind certain items you bring. We're really known for our stuffed animals here. So every single year we launch a new
Gotcha.
stuffed animal. And this year it's the pony. Last year it was a penguin. We've done a porpoise. So we just try and keep it fresh and new. And I would say the one thing that we do is we don't try and fall into the habit of what is everybody else doing? Because, whatever everybody else is doing, if we copy that, we're not going to stand out. So I try to look elsewhere. I try to go online for a lot of inspiration to find things that are unique and that people wouldn't necessarily think about when they're thinking about parking.
I like that. That's a good separating advantage, like a competitive edge. Even though we're all friends here, it's good to have a separation as the stuffed animals. I've never even, thinking about like college career fairs or other trade expos. That's really a neat item to have. And you also talked about continuing to stand out from the pack, doing extensive research. You mentioned briefly an event you're spearheading. It's called Fusion 25, Parker's first user conference. What can attendees expect from this event?
I am really excited for this because we've spent over a year brainstorming. Okay, what are conferences doing that is going well? I mean, we go to 20 different events. What are things that we would personally change? And then what are things that exemplify Parker technology in ways that people may not expect? So, for our specific user conference, I think people can expect sessions that are super tailored towards the attendee list. So as we've been receiving a lot of different attendees, at first we expected it to be a range of different titles and people attending, but we've noticed that a lot of executives within our industry are attending. It's definitely heavily skewing towards VPs, C-suite presidents. So
Hmm.
we've changed our content and we've tailored our content towards the people that are attending. And we're being very mindful of, okay, in every single session, they have to have some sort of takeaway, whether or not it's some way to work with us better, if it's a different take on the industry, if it's something actionable, we're looking for actionable items that people can bring back. But then also on the experience side, we've got a lot of things that I don't think have been done before. We'll be having a petting zoo, like a technology petting zoo where people can come
Oh,
in.
okay.
I'm excited. And although there won't be actual animals there other than our plushies, people will be able to
Hmm.
interact with different park systems that we have attending and sponsoring, and how Parker Technology works with those specific systems and some of our other integration partners. And then also, we're trying something super new. And in terms of activities, I know people love activities outside of the conference itself
Right.
because networking is like the lifeblood of parking, in my opinion. But We'll be going to a baseball game here in Indianapolis at Victory Field for our final party, which will be really exciting.
That's
Well,
dope.
I'm very excited for it. It'll be unlimited food and drinks, so I think people will love that. But
Oh yeah.
um, we also have a rotating skyline restaurant that will be on our first night. And, Indianapolis has just grown in the past 20 years. It looks completely different. I've been born and raised here. And so I think we're just trying to give people a taste of all of the best things of the city, but also the best things about Parker technology and customer experience. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a great event.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic event. Is it for a few days? What are the dates of the event? How could people learn
So
more about it?
If you go to parkertechnology.com/fusion25, you'll know that our dates are going to be from May 27th. That night is the rotating restaurant I talked about, all the way until May 30th, which is our breakfast send-off. But we'll have 2 full days of sessions. We'll have an awards luncheon. We'll have tons of different happy hour events, and we may have some secret events too that our attendees might find out about sooner. So we'll see.
Okay, got you. You know, attendees, you got to pull up. If you know, you know. There's some secret events out there, so come on.
Mhm. Some people might be receiving some unexpected invitations. So we're excited for those things.
That is so good. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the data piece. You know, you're taking a look at some of these events and just looking at metrics and like how people were receiving, the booth or maybe how you delivered a pitch about the company. And also you're taking a look at the insights of the attendees for the trade show about, oh, okay, well, we have some higher ups, some VPs, some executives coming to the event. Let's maybe go down another path and make sure that they're really getting something out of our your first event for Parker Technology. So, how do you go about aggregating the data and how hard of a shift is it from, when you're thinking about one plan of action that you are thinking about executing and thinking it's going to be a great success, and then the data comes and you're like, oh, it's still going to be a success, but let me go ahead and pivot it to cater to my audience. How important is data to you in your role?
That's a really good question. So for me specifically, I would say data makes up 80% of my thought process, or maybe 70%. And then my other 30% is my gut and my heart and my past experiences. Because I think a lot of the time we can receive data or I can analyze data and you can make it tell the story you want to tell. If you look for a specific story, data can always be spun in a way that corroborates what you're thinking. So, but I also think that, you have to go with your gut and your head sometimes and be like, this is a risk. This is not what this would not be a typical decision, but I think it's going to pay off. And I forget the actual term of it, but I think our CEO says experiments never fail, because you're always trying something new, and that's great. But in terms of data itself and pivoting, we're very lucky to have built a substantial CRM here. So we utilize Salesforce, and I'm in Salesforce. Our sales reps are in Salesforce so many times throughout the day that I mean, it's just ingrained in everything that we do. So we're constantly putting data in and making sure that we're targeting the right people. Um, and then that the people who are actually attending our user conference itself, like, okay, I know that these are the park systems they use. I know that this is how many events that we've talked to them at before. These are the conversations that we've had with them. Let's make sure we tailor a message towards their wants and needs.
I love that. It's so insightful, especially for folks that are looking to maybe have events like Parker Technology is having. You guys are paving the way, and it's really good to just hear about how data really affects you as far as making decisions, but also having that gut feeling like, hey, I'm just gonna jump off this porch and I'm gonna go for it. So
Yeah,
that is good to have,
exactly.
but you also have the data to back you up as well. So I really admire that, and I feel like in our industry, data drives everything. So it's just interesting to see how you're doing a different spin on that and really enhancing and promoting your company, not only through the podcast, but this amazing event, Fusion 25, that's coming up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. And we're talking about trade shows, we're talking about different events, and we know it's a significant part of your role. Which trade shows do you consider a must go to in our?
That's sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem.
That's a really good question. I would say it's hard because I haven't attended a lot of the regional shows, but if you're new to the industry, and luckily, Robert, I know you already have one of these under your belt, but I would say PI, IPMI, and NPA are the big three that I cannot miss. Every
Okay,
single year, I'm going to those specific shows, and I'm making sure I'm talking to as many people as possible. And they each have their own benefits, and they each cater to a different type of person. So the way we approach IPMI is completely different than the way we approach NPA or PI. But we're just trying to be very mindful of the audiences that are attending, because we know that IPMI is more university based, NPA is more private operator based. And then, I mean, you'll still get some people that are in between and it doesn't follow exactly 100%. But I think those three specifically are my favorites, my go-tos.
gotcha. And you talked about how you tailor to each trade show. I know you mentioned like you have 20 that you attend. Do you create templates for this? Like, how do you know, like, oh, okay, well, you had the university audience at IPMI, and then you have more of a get together with Pi, and MPA has its own other brand as well. So, how do you take that outlook as far as, catering to your audience?
So we build SOPs and we build processes. So when I'm thinking about how many people we would like a happy hour to be able to hold, I'm keeping quantities in mind and specific key contacts in mind that are a specific mold. And so then, as I already have all of the audiences and I know who is going to be there, we tailor our messaging too. We give away a lot of postcards and items with our swag at trade shows, and we make sure to tailor it directly to a specific type of audience, and be ready to have those conversations with universities, with private operators, with municipalities. So it really varies. It varies a lot, and Pi looks completely different than all of them because I feel like Pi is a very, especially this past year, it just welcomes everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a mix of everybody. I can't really target pie people specifically, but I do know if I go to pie that I'm going to get a good mix of people.
That's so good. And you talked about some of these tools in order to make sure you're crafting, it, especially to attendees or the audience that you really want to potentially maybe be an ideal partner, an ideal customer. I want to know more about some of the tools that you might be able to share that you use maybe on a day-to-day that has helped boost morale within your company and maybe what hasn't worked in the past but maybe you used a new tool, how has that improved the overall efficiency for outreach and engagement and retention?
Absolutely. So there's three tools I would like to highlight. The first one is Salesforce or just a CRM in general, because I know a lot of marketers also use HubSpot and there's a few different types, but having a CRM, and understanding the value that you put into shows is super important because if you're attending shows and you have your list and you don't know who you talked to and on a year-to-year basis, you can't compare it with past years and you can't know like how you're trending or which shows are valuable to you. I think in the long run it's going to make things a lot more difficult, but there's nothing better than, talking to our sales reps and saying, okay, at Pi this year, we talked to 30% more people than we did last year. That is just a huge morale boost from our team. The other one that we use is Slack. So this is more of a communication tool, but we
I love
share
Slack.
wins. I do too. I think it's perfect for sharing wins. I think it's perfect for having conversations with your teammates, to boost morale in general. But then the last one, and this is actually a newer one that we've added on within the past year, is that we use Ramify. which is a basically an app that you can scan a business card, you can scan somebody's badge, and then through AI, it helps develop information about that person and track the type of conversations that you have with them. So when we're attending these shows, we now have a lot more data that we're tracking, and we're not losing data and like, I don't know who I talked to, I can't remember. That doesn't really happen with Ramify anymore. So we've loved that tool, and we implemented that about a half a year ago, and it's really worked out well for that data piece.
Yeah, that sounds like a game changer. Well, we live in a digital age, but I went to a pod conference. I was like, oh wow, it was really good to print all these business cards off because a lot of folks in our industry, they still like to use business cards and write notes on their business cards. So that tool that you mentioned, that really is a game changer. Thanks for dropping gems on here.
Oh yeah, I'd highly recommend that. We learned about it through T2, their team, and then since then, I know a lot of other companies have started to jump on the Ramify bandwagon, so we love it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of success has been, generated from these events, but I want to know about how do these events contribute to Parker's technology's growth, but most importantly, your own personal development.
Absolutely. So I will say, in terms of events and marketing, a lot of marketers find that the best way to find leads is through live events. I think COVID really changed a lot of things for people, and I think COVID put a lot of things into perspective. And then the years after COVID, we saw everybody just craving human interaction. And I think the same goes with sales. This is the type of industry where in order to implement technology, in order to implement different systems, you have to have somebody that you like at a company. People aren't going to buy from somebody that they don't like, no matter how good the product is. So as we're
That's
going to
so good.
shows, I mean, it's so true. And you have to build those connections. So shows is the primary way to do it. I will say, especially with now, if you Google something, if you Google any terminology, before you get the first result, which are usually just two advertisements, you're getting an AI result with just a breakdown of what you're looking for. So I think
Right.
visibility is so difficult. And if you go to shows and you put yourself out there, then that's so much more visible and memorable than, different types of marketing.
That's good. Yeah, like honestly, just having that live and, human feel, I can really get behind what you're saying, honestly, because, who want if you don't have your face on an email or you're not really getting a lot of insights through LinkedIn or email, nothing beats just being able to have an exchange of conversations and it be natural and you just get to really connect with people that make the parking industry go around. That's really what I appreciated at the trade show as well. And just sitting back and hearing about your insights is so much more than just getting the booth together and creating a list of people that you talk to. It's so much more. You need to look at, how are you increasing year over year? Is it a great return on your investment? And just most importantly, how can we get better with the tools that, maybe use existing and how can we, take some insight from what we learned at some of these workshops or just networking with new buddies in the industry. It's great to hear how all of these trade shows are really making an impact for everyone that you go to.
Absolutely. And the one piece I will add about trade shows specifically, and I know we'll get into some hot takes, but what we've found through data and our hot take is that booths are awesome. Booths are great, but that's not where a majority of the real conversations are happening.
Mm,
Um, if you want to have legitimate conversations with somebody, you can't be stuck behind a table. You can't be stuck sitting down on your laptop, on your phone, just not paying attention to the people around you. You have to go out to sessions. You have to go out to dinners. You have to go to the hotel bar and say hi to somebody you don't know. Otherwise, I mean, people are walking up and down the expo floor aisles, but it's going to make a bigger impact if you're talking to them one on one in a genuine way at these social events that many trade shows have.
that is so good. And Parker Technology, they've been at the forefront of integrating technology into parking solutions. Can you elaborate on some of the innovations that have transformed the overall customer experience?
Absolutely. So I think what we're known for on a base level is our two-way video integration. That's patented. So what I love to tell people specifically is that if you're going into a garage and you press a button or depending on what you do, and you see another face and they can see you, that's us. So as human to human connection becomes more and more important, I would say that's been one of the biggest things that we've been known for and how we've been paving the way. And I know we have that two-way video integration with a couple of our parks partners. But I'd also say on the data side, I mean, we just launched an integration with Get My Parking, but we also have integrations with a lot of great partners. I have to shout out Accra. They're wonderful. They're incredible. But on the tech side, we're just trying to make sure that this industry in general is just, we're trying to be the Switzerland. Like we can be friends with absolutely everybody. There isn't sort of like a stay away, I don't want to integrate with you. We're just very happy to be open with each other in order to make the customer experience. I mean, that's why we're all doing this better at the end of the day.
Gotcha. And it's all about partnership, it seems like, just with different parking administrators. They have a plethora of tools that they extract insights from. How is it collaborating with different partners in the industry? How do you go about selecting partners and choosing the right fits for integration?
That's a very good question. So I'm going to reference a webinar that we did. It was a tech talk that we did with our partners at Okra, with Ethan Glass, who's their CEO, and then Brian Wolf, who is our CEO. And just talking through when you're selecting tech partners, it has to be somebody who they're honest about what they say they can do. It's the same way with sales that if you're talking to somebody and they're like, yes, I can do this. Yes, yes, yes. If they're giving you too many yeses, but they can't back it up. That's not what you want out of a tech partner. You want somebody who's excited to collaborate with you, who's open and honest about their outcomes and their shortfalls so that you can work well together in the future. And then also understanding the scope of things too. So having your tech teams sit together and talk about it versus having two people who may not understand the tech level be like, well, why don't we have an integration? There's some integrations that just don't work because you don't have tech people talking to each other. So
Yeah,
on a high level, it'd be great if everybody could integrate, but you really need to have the technology to support that.
that's so good. That was a key right there.
Oh yeah.
And looking ahead, what technological advancements do you see for shaping the future of the parking industry?
Well, I'd love to talk about one that we specifically are developing.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yes, so recently we had a tech talk with our Chief Product Officer, James Payton, who is displaying the AI capabilities that we have based on voice technology and how that's going to be impacting the parking industry in the future. It's something that we're looking at developing because on the customer service side, it would be a huge game changer if we're able to use a lot of different data. From our different customers who all have different facilities, maybe want their calls handled in a certain way. But if there's organizations that are interested in, okay, well, instead of, I would love to have zero wait time, I'd love to have it handled in this specific way. I think AI is really going to start impressing a lot of people. And it's something we'll talk more about at Fusion 25. James is going into a pre-keynote about AI and what we're looking to do with it. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's dope. That's exciting times. It's really good to hear like parking companies are leveraging AI because, I feel like in this parking industry, just being in the parking industry, it's like one of the last industries that is catching up into all the realm of the latest and greatest technology. So just to hear about the AI implementation that's going on and how you're thinking about voice recognition, that is just something great to hear, just giving folks maybe that hands-free feel. I love that, honestly. So that's so good to hear about making great strides in the parking industry. I also like to hear about the patents that you have as well. That's just something great to look forward to as somebody that, I still feel like I'm a little young, so I like to make sure like we're moving in a really rapid pace as far as operating and accepting the new technology that comes. Like, a lot of people used to be hesitant about Chat GPT, but now we're about to implement AI into, everyday activities that we have. So, that voice recognition that you're talking about, and folks, you need to go to Fusion 25 to hear more about it. But
Yeah.
overall, just hearing about that sneak peek, that's like, oh my gosh, I need to get my ticket.
It'll be really exciting. And beyond James, we also have a few other AI experts. We have the CEO of Authentics, Amy Brown, who will also be speaking about humans and technology and AI, and especially growth as a company. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a great event, and that's really where we're premiering what we've been working on. So.
That is so good. Wow, you have so many things in the pipeline. I'm gonna also switch gears here because we haven't even talked about what else you work on. You said this was only 10%, but it has already created such a great impact into the parking industry. A lot of people really appreciate this podcast. You are the producer of Harder Than It Looks podcast. Tell me what inspired this initiative and what kind of topics do you cover on this podcast?
I am super glad you asked about it. So when I first started at Parker Technology, we were, I think, 4 episodes in. And I remember jumping into a recording call, just trying to wrap my head around everything because I was still really new to the industry at the time. And I believe we had Marlene Kramer on, and I'm just trying to understand, what is it about this industry that's making people tick? I mean, who can talk about parking for an hour? And now I realize I could talk about parking for an hour. There's so many
Oh
there's so
yeah.
many different aspects of it. But I mean, really what we've learned through this initiative is that it does not matter who is in the seat. I think so many different people provide a lot of different values. You can't just replicate yourself and then be in an echo chamber. It is so important to understand where people are coming from and their perspectives. Even if you listen to episodes, there's some topics that it's like two guests wouldn't agree on the same thing, but in order to give people that platform and giving parking people that platform to talk about their experiences, I think as a whole, it's just going to help move forward our industry into being better connected with each other and understanding each other and where we come from.
I love that. And that is so real. Like, not everybody thinks the same way or has the same perspective. So it's great that you provide a platform where all voices can be heard and we can still have a candid conversation to still hear both sides of the story. So I
Mhm.
love that. You mentioned a couple of guests on there, but I want to know, is there any memorable episode or guest insights that you were like, I'm still thinking about that episode?
That's a really good. Um, so one of them in particular, or a few of them I'll mention, is we did one with Walt Gray, who comes from an airport's parking background, and just talking about, and this was really fascinating to me, post 9/11, how everything parking wise in airports changed. And so from his experience, there'd be people who were building brand new parking garages, and then unfortunately, this tragedy happens, and now these parking garages can't be utilized due to how close they are to the runway, which is
Mm,
really interesting to me. But he had a very fascinating episode. I think, a lot of people talk about municipalities, they talk about universities and private operators and parking, but airport parking is a whole different beast that I was really
really?
interested in. Yes. And then another really memorable episode is, I would say, with Mike Simmons, who is the CEO of Tez right now, but he previously came from T2, and his journey back into parking after he retired. And somebody, to bring it back to airplanes, saw him reading a parking magazine on an airplane. And then that was a domino effect, not to spoil it, on him making his way back into parking and then leading Tez now. So I
Mm.
thought that was super fascinating itself. But honestly, I love all of the episodes. Our guests have just been really fantastic and really genuine. And I think they're coming from a genuine place where they want to share their ideas and that they're not necessarily like trying to commercialize themselves or their businesses, but just talking about where they're coming from. So I love the podcast we produce. It's been such a journey. When I started, I wasn't editing it. I was just producing it, but now I'm editing it. I'm doing the clips. I'm doing pretty much everything other than luckily speaking on it. Our CEO Brian does a great job. So, but on the back end, it's been really interesting working on this project.
Got you. No, I love that. And how long does it take you to like edit a video? What is that process like?
It's really dependent. Luckily, AI tools makes it a lot easier. So we utilize Descript. So depending on the episode, and to be honest with you, and these are two examples. We recorded our live pie show floor one, and of the 1 hour and 50 minutes that we had of usable audio, I had cut 20 minutes out of like uhs and ums. So it
Wow,
was
okay.
down to one. So people use a lot of filler words.
Oh yeah.
And it was the same. I do that too. And I don't
Oh
realize
yeah, I'm
until
guilty.
checking it on Descript and I'm seeing how many ums I used. And I was saying, I don't remember even using any filler words. But so I would say that along with editing videos, creating clips, creating show notes, creating podcast materials, and then allowing our guests to review it. It honestly, it could take just maybe 4 to 8 hours per episode of production. So we're doing that every 2 weeks. So that's where I get the 10%. But it really varies. But luckily, AI has made it a lot easier.
It's so interesting learning about your process, like, but it's so worth it, kind of like what you were been saying, having these conversations. Like, folks don't understand what all goes into these trade shows, what it goes into having a podcast, and just having a conversation with someone, and how you have to edit the video and just make sure that the audience receives the insights that you are hoping that they will really absorb. So, I just really appreciate this conversation that we're having. It's so good to me.
Absolutely. It's so fun.
And I want to go ahead and switch gears right now. So, we talked about events, we talked about tech, we talked about growth, but now it's time to pop the trunk and we need to look under the hood. So, this is where we're going to go beyond the surface. These questions I don't really see a lot of people asking at panels or webinars or keynotes, but I personally feel like they should be. So, I want to ask you, are you ready to dive a little bit deeper? These might be some controversial questions.
Absolutely. I am excited for the spicy questions.
Okay. So what part of parking do we keep overcomplicating, but we probably should simplify?
When I was originally reading this question, and there's like little notes, I had the same thought, but something that I think that should be simplified is technology bloat. When it comes to adding so many different technology types. So, whether or not it's a direct integration or a direct technology you're implementing, in my opinion, if it's not making your customer's life easier, and if it's not making your life easier, then there is no reason to implement it. I am not a fan of bells and whistles. I truly think that something has to make an actual business impact on either you or a customer in a positive way. Otherwise, it just should not be implemented. So I know when people go through audits, and like, even on your credit card statement and you're seeing all of these different subscriptions add up, I feel like it's the same for technology. It's like, wait, why do I even have this in the first place? I don't use this. My
Right.
customers don't use this. Um, so I do think that it is overcomplicated in that way.
And do you think whenever we get into like these solutions, like let's say an administrator just feels like they have to have those new shiny bells and whistles, and then later on they come to the realization that, oh, maybe I actually didn't need this. Kind of like how we're like Netflix or Hulu, like, do I really need Netflix and Hulu and Showtime? So with that being said, um, how do you think they kind of navigate with the multiple solutions that they have? And when it comes to them realizing, hey, maybe I didn't need it, why do a lot of professionals still want to keep the same contract or just make sure that we are working with this solution? Is it because they bought it, or is it too hard to change solutions? What do you think?
I think it comes down to the pain of change and
Mm,
whether or not the pain of change, or so if the pain of having it is outweighing the pain of change, then change happens. But if you're having like a dull pain and you're like, oh, well, I'd have to do this, this, and this, I'd have to like buy myself out of a contract, I'd have to explore other vendors, I'd have to tell my whole team that, hey, and this comes down to pride. This thing that I implemented, I don't necessarily think it's working the way that we want to. I think there's so many different factors that go into changing something, and sometimes the pain of keeping it is just not, it's not the same as the pain of change. But I think just identifying and accepting when, okay, this isn't working. And I think in terms of the greater good, I need to get here. Just being mindful of, it's going to suck in the meantime, but we'll get where we need to be.
that is so good. That's so real, honestly, because yeah, when you break it down like that, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's gonna be way worse if I try to remove this software now or remove this subscription. It's going to cause me a headache. I might as well just keep it. Wow. That's interesting. A lot of people think that way. And with just aside from parking, all of us have subscriptions. I'm sure we haven't even utilized over the last month. So
Mhm.
that was really good perspective for me.
Thank you.
Now let's move a little bit more into that customer experience. So, we always want to dedicate a 10-star experience in the parking industry. And you also know that, parking administrators, they feel like they are a lot of the times overlooked by some of the commuters. Commuters feel like, oh, yeah, parking administrators, they're always out to get me. Why are they always issuing tickets or giving me boots or tows? So, with some of these software solutions that parking administrators utilize in order to create that experience, do we feel as the folks that are creating the parking solutions, is customer experience really at the center? I also want to really have a deep dive into this because, some people, companies, they get up into tech giants, very big parking giants, and then the customer experience or the feedback loop from some conversations that you might have heard in the past, they're like, oh, well, I haven't heard from this company in a while. I feel like I don't really have a lot of customer feedback. So, do we feel that the customer experience is really at the center of our industry, or do we just say that because it sounds good?
I have a lot of opinions about this question. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody because I'm very customer experience focused, but at the end of the day, we're all businesses. So we're all revenue driven. So I was talking to somebody at a trade show, I forget who, and they said, we all just say that we're customer experience focused, but it's about revenue at the end of the day. But what I will say is, if you are not customer experience focused, that's a short term way to run your business because with SEO, with reviews, I know Andrew Sachs talks about this a lot, but let's say you're a parking facility and you're not focused on the customer experience and things are going really well for the first 3 months. If you start to get bad reviews based on a bad customer experience, you may not necessarily have customer experience payments. Like, let's say you work with Parker Technology and you don't have somebody taking your calls, but the revenue looks really good because we're charging all of these fees. At the end of the day, after you get those bad reviews, Google will stop showing your business. So
Mm,
you have
that's
under a
true.
certain threshold, and then you just won't be visible. And so for people who are planning ahead of time to park and they're looking on Google for where to park and they don't see you, that all comes down to the customer experience just because you were too revenue focused. So I think they're pretty symbiotic. Obviously, you can't not think about revenue whatsoever because in terms of running a business, that's everything. But in this industry, I think that's very short term. It's a very short term approach to be non-customer experience focused. It just has to be a facet of what you do, and it has to be good.
No, I love that. That's some good perspective. I want to know more about, as people anyway. We always are like, even me sometimes as far as like, wanting to evolve in life, like, hey, I want to hit this goal or I want to hit this KPI, this revenue milestone, or yeah, I want to make sure that this metric has been accomplished in quarter two. How do you think about, you know, just really making sure that, hey, the customer comes first? I don't get my own thoughts in the way as far as, oh, I'm scratching my head to make sure that we need to hit these numbers this month or make sure that this has increased year over year, as we were talking about earlier. How do you make sure that you think about, why you got started? I'm looking to create that product. I'm looking create that customer experience, which we all know that should be at the forefront. How do you make sure that you continue to have that tunnel vision, but still be mindful that you need to keep the lights on?
I would say you have to have customer experience as a part of your quantitative and qualitative data. So if you're having your NPS score, or yeah, if you're just having NPS and you're taking polls of your customers, you have to identify their sentiment for you. And that has to be a part of your metrics because you can look at revenue and say, okay, we're doing fantastic, but our score is so low that, this is not sustainable. That has to be a part of your metric system. And you have to have, customer success as a part of that and tracking those scores. Otherwise, I just think that's short term. But then I also think you need qualitative data. So when we're looking at trade shows, I have a breakdown of all of our shows for the past few years, how many people we talked to, what we spent on that show, et cetera, how many conversations were good conversations. But then I also have qualitative data, and I'm asking people, how do you think this went? What are things that you liked about this? What did you dislike?
That's
And then
good.
combining that data, it's so important. You have to have qualitative data as well as quantitative. Quantitative to keep the lights on, qualitative to know that perspective wise, you're on the right track.
That's a great balance. I want to go ahead and switch over. We kind of briefly talked about it a little bit of just about the new bells and whistles, but why do you feel like so many cities and operators launch new parking systems without fixing the broken communication that already frustrates the users and also even maybe internal? Maybe there's some broken communication between the staffing and the teams and, the customer support that we mentioned from some of the bigger giants in the industry. um, why do you feel like so many people need so many systems? Is there not a one-stop shop in the world of parking?
That's a good question. I would say there's a few organizations trying to be a one-stop shop, but I do think that tech partners and being open to connecting with people, because we have to all admit we can't do absolutely everything,
Oh yeah.
be everything to everybody. Otherwise, your business is just too big and you can't necessarily focus on what you're good at. But I'd say the biggest, I don't know if it's an issue, but for some vendors, there's a huge barrier to entry. I know for a lot of tech partners, it feels like, well, there's already some other people doing this in some certain ways. So there's just, I'd say, a lot of big players that make it really difficult to enter this market, especially since we're so relationship based. And then I would also say you have people who have been in the industry for a really long time. And maybe this is also like, okay, their father's been in the industry and their father's father, because that happens quite a lot in parking.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
you just have people who, they have technology and they're big players. It's just very hard to compete with them. But then the customer is stuck to just a few specific options. So I'm not necessarily sure how that problem can be fixed or if it's a problem. But I think that's just what some of us are experiencing on the customer side. And there's been times where I've talked to people, and I won't call out any companies in general because it happens, but somebody be like, well, I'm implementing this thing and it's just been a drag for them. It's been really hard for them and it doesn't do everything that they want it to do. But, at the time, it's just the best option because it's the only option.
I definitely agree. I've heard similar conversations, which is why I wanted to bring this to light. Um, oh my gosh, you really hit a lot of points on there, honestly.
Hmm.
And some folks, just like you said, they go to what's available or um, just whatever, other folks that are kind of in the surrounding areas, if you're a university or what are the other municipalities utilizing. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and I really thank you for sharing your perspective on that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about one belief that the parking industry holds that you personally think is wrong or at least outdated.
So I'm very passionate about this. I'm about to turn 30, but I have a very young face. So there's times where I go to conferences and I've had people say like, "Oh my God, this is your first job out of college," or "You're so young."
Oh
So
yeah.
I get that. Even at Pi, I had somebody, I think it's a joke, be like, "Can you even drink that?" after I had like a beer.
Yeah.
So I will say I think in this industry, and we might have touched on this at Pi, but just there's an aversion and there's like a fear of people who are younger, especially Gen Z or elder millennials or elder Gen Z like me, tail end of millennials,
hmm
that there's just a fear that young people are incapable of understanding all of the nuances within this industry. But I think that, you have people who are being raised by technology in a way, and they're going to be entering the industry no matter what. So I do feel like there's a huge aversion just to young people, and I wish that were different. It's a very hard community to crack. And then, especially if you're young and you go to trade shows, and people may not feel like, oh, well, you're not old, so you must not have any
Yeah, no
influence. Not worth my
experience.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that's probably the most outdated belief, in my opinion. I've met so many talented Gen Z people, millennial people who are very business oriented, who have a lot of great thoughts, but who might be overlooked based on how they look or how what their perceived age is.
Got you. Yeah, so what are some ways you think that we can break that stereotype? Because I've run into that same issue as well. Just being that young face, literally the same thing. Go have a drink at the bar. Are you sure? Like, you got a baby face. Are you sure you're 21?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's rough. Um, I think it's really going to take advocates from people who are outside of this age group, to bring us into the limelight at times. I think unfortunately, it just takes people from outside of the age group to give us a voice and give us a platform. Which luckily, I mean, at shows and there's been organizations I've been a part of who have given me a platform to speak, specifically the Parketing Collective, Women in Parking, Kevin Uhlenacher. I think there's just a lot of organizations that are trying to highlight all voices, which I love.
I love that too.
I think everybody needs to get on board with that.
No,
So
I feel you. Yeah, so I do have like another like question off of that. Like, so older folks, it's great to have them in the industry. Like, we welcome that as well. Like, I personally love taking time to talk to professionals with maybe 20 plus years of experience. So I can figure out, oh, okay, well, this is what you've done. This is what you've seen in the industry. This is what you're operating with now. How do you continue to think about ways? Let's say like if you're a budding startup or maybe you didn't take the route of joining like a giant tech corporation, how do you think about ways to break into this industry? And also, even if you are in those big spaces and with some of the big players, but maybe like you said, you only been here for a year and 7 months, or maybe it's your first trade show, similar to me. How do you think about breaking into those, like the kind of like secret societies, like everybody is, you got your own clique like the Mean Girls. So how do you break into there?
it's funny that you say that. I think that you really have to be curious and you have to put your ego aside, at least for a few trade shows. And you don't want to go into trade shows thinking that you have something to prove and then not being a sponge. I think it's so important to go to these shows, to be a sponge, to be really curious. It's funny. I remember I went to a happy hour at NPA, and somebody, I'm not sure if he'll listen to this, but I asked him like, he's like, well, I gotta leave this party. And I'm like, oh, where are you going? And he's like, oh, well, I have another secret event. I'm like, a secret event that's not on anybody's list. What is it? So you just have to be able to ask questions that I think people are not necessarily expecting, and you have to be genuine. I think genuine recognizes genuine, and you
Hmm.
have to be a positive person. I don't think people are going to get invited to certain things if the energies that they're bringing off are negative. Um, you want to tend to have people who are fun to be around, who are kind, who are honest, and who also won't be pelting you with business conversations when you're at the happy hour. That's another thing that you should do is don't
Yeah,
corner someone and be like, do business with me. Especially when they're having a drink. That's a bad idea. But
exactly. No, no, that's some great perspective. I want to ask you a personal question. It may be a little personal, but what I want to know is, kind of like, because we're in a similar space, just really up and coming, like not even pushing 30 yet. Um, have you ever thought about like, oh wow, I am in a big role. I have a lot of responsibility. Do you ever get discouraged when, maybe you have a plan of action that you just thought was going to go so successful, but it might have been a different outcome? Maybe it still was successful, but you know how we are as people. Folks will say, "Oh, you did a great job," but you come home and you're like, "I could have did this better," or "This could
Mhm.
have went that way." Do you ever face that in your career? And if so, how have you navigated it and still persevered?
That's a really good question. I'd say this is something I think about probably more than daily. I think about this
Me too.
absolutely all the time. And I think for people like us who are so success oriented is it's just something I've had to learn, especially like I've been in a marketing role for 8 years, and learning that I remember when I first started, and the biggest mistake I made was like I would nitpick absolutely everything. And then I had somebody say to me, Courtney, not everything has to be perfect. And so then that was, but in my head at the time, I'm like, well, yes, it does, because marketing should be perfect. But
Hmm.
then as I've been progressing in my career and having shortfalls and having wins and understanding failure, it's like, okay, somebody who does something 1,000 times and they fail every single time has learned 1,000 lessons. They've learned more than somebody who has never even tried. So for work that I put out, that it's like, okay, this isn't A plus, but it's something. Like we publish every single day on our social media. We put out a lot of different episodes, and they're nothing is perfect, but just understanding that like, okay, if this is a failure, then I am absolutely going to learn from it, and I am not going to make that happen again. And so, there's been times where you're in your early 20s and you're like, oh my gosh, I know everything. I've learned so much through college, through high school. Like, I know how the world works. I don't need somebody else teaching me. And that's just unfortunately a hard lesson that I think all of us have had to go through at some point. Like,
Oh yeah.
here you go.
Got you. Yeah, that was so good. So it sounds like you just gave yourself that grace and realized that, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to put it out. And sometimes I do the same thing. I put it out and I'm like, wow, this did way better than I could have even imagined. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just I just love that takeaway, honestly. And we have to be trailblazers, especially coming into an industry that, may not adopt like young perspective or like, some of the technology advancements that we've been thinking about. Just being able to know that, hey, you're here in the room, it gives you all of the reason to continue to keep moving forward and being a trailblazer because we are literally the next generation in this parking industry. So we need to make sure that we are staying together. Just different folks. I met a lot of young faces at the Accelerate Pitch competition at Pi and getting to meet young folks like you as well. It's just great to know, like, oh yeah, the next generation of parking professionals is still in great hands. So,
Yes. Yep. And not to be like just knowing you can't be discouraged and that your work is not your worth, you know?
right.
Like I think everybody has so much more to offer than their failures or their successes. And just knowing that and not taking certain things to heart. I mean, business is business. We're all just learning, and no business is
Right.
perfect.
That is so good. I want to know what is a surprising reason that somebody reached out to Parker Technology for help. Do you have any like crazy story like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they reached out for this?
So I'll talk about it on the customer side, and I'll also talk about it on the Parker side, and when they press the help button. But on the customer side, we try to just narrow ourselves to be like, okay, we can solve your problem, but we want to make sure that it's easy for our CSRs to answer those calls and that we're setting them up for success. So like an example is like Campus Park, where they unfortunately were tasked with elevator help calls for people
Oh
stuck in
wow.
elevators.
Hmm.
And so those are emergency bases, and sometimes they can't, depending on the shift, it'd be difficult to answer those specific help calls. But, through Parker, we're able to help people who are trapped in elevator situations. So that's something people wouldn't necessarily think about us for. But on the customer side, I work super close to our call center's room. So I'm hearing calls day in, day out. And I
Hmm.
would say we have helped two interesting people that I know of. I know we've had more than this. But somebody who has come through, and we have video, but obviously we can't really share it for private reasons. But
Right.
Queen Latifah has come through one of our, and she pressed the help button. She called Parker for help.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's just crazy. And then the other one that we had, the other celebrity was Ludacris. And
What?
the girl who took the call, she started freaking out. She's like, "Are you Luda?" And he's like, "I wish." It was clearly Ludacris.
Oh my gosh. She said I wish.
Yeah. And so since our calls are recorded and somebody heard her freaking out, because I mean, if you're talking to Luda randomly, you're not expecting that on a random
Right.
day. Somebody else heard her, and then we record all of our calls so that we're able to show our customers like this is how we handled it. And so we were able to get that recording, and it just made my day.
And it was him.
Yes, it was him. Because I remember seeing an interview with him on the street where somebody went up to him and they're like, "Oh my God, you're ludicrous." And he goes, "I wish." And that's the same way he answered,
Gotcha.
"We know your game." So,
Right. It's like again, if you know, you know.
mhm, mhm.
No, that's cool. Those are really some cool stories. Like, not too many times you get to meet a celebrity, or at least talk to
No.
them, you know?
Just basically a Zoom call with a celebrity and they
Right. No big
crazy.
deal. Just another
Yeah.
day at the office.
Like talk about it forever. Like the time I helped Ludacris get out of a lot. So.
Right. Now, I want to ask you a bonus wild card question. So, I want to know what's something that people in parking whisper about, but they never actually say it out loud.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna spin this one on its head because I thought about this one. When you're at conferences, you never know. I mean, people are jumping jobs all the time in the parking industry. You talk to somebody at one show, and then a year later, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually with this company now." You have to maintain good relationships with everybody. Do not talk smack about different organizations. And then like and then on the other hand, just expect like a year down the line, it's like, oh well, now I actually have to work with them, and then I accidentally like said something I shouldn't have. You have
Right.
to maintain positive relationships with people. And then also on that note, I think when you're talking to people at trade shows, you never know the person you're talking to and what value that they have. And in my opinion, everyone is value. You can't ignore a vendor just because, like, oh, I'm gonna ignore you because what's your value to me? That's just not how you should look at it transactionally. I think every conversation is an opportunity to learn from somebody, and to build relationships. And you never know when down the line you might need their help. So that's my one little sass note because there's been times I've heard conversation, I was like, "You're saying that in a public setting? For real?"
Right.
So,
No, that is so good right there. I feel the same way, honestly. It's like always be kind to people because you never know when you're literally gonna have to work with someone or they might be a decision maker for something that you need in your life. So
Yes,
I really appreciated that feedback.
absolutely.
You see what I mean, y'all? These questions help us get better, not just smoother, but smarter. Courtney, I want to thank you so much for keeping it real with us under this segment.
Absolutely. And I know these are the types of conversations I wish people would have more often in our industry. And I hope through this podcast they're able to do so.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, what I want to know next is what's next for you and Parker Technology? Are there any exciting projects or goals that you have coming up on the horizon?
It's a great question. So we have Fusion coming up in just a month and 3 days, and it's ticking in my brain. I'm excited for it. But that's going to be a really big project, but also our work with AI and what we're looking forward to in the future. I mean, keep an eye on us in the next 4 months or so. We might be making some big waves. And then the last thing I want to mention is, we have IPMI coming up, and we'll have a lot of fun stuff prepped for that. Maybe a secret happy hour. So if you're interested and you need an invite, I'm the person you got to talk to. So that's all
Gotcha.
I will say.
Okay. And I know some people are itching to figure out how to get in contact with you. So, for those interested in connecting with you or just learning more about Parker Technology, what's the best way to reach out?
Absolutely. So we have a LinkedIn where we post so many interesting things on Parker Technologies Insta or LinkedIn. I don't have the handle, but also our website, parkertechnology.com. And if you'd like to connect with me, I have LinkedIn on Courtney Cooper, or you can shoot me an email at courtney.cooper@parkertechnology.com, and I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Well, Courtney, it's been an absolute pleasure just having you on the show. Your work reminds us, but behind every piece of parking technology and every community event, there are real people, passionate, committed, and curious, and most importantly, making innovative strides in order to pave the way forward. I just want to thank you for not only sharing your knowledge, but your story.
Thank you. It's been so fun. I think we've had a lot of real conversations about the industry and where it's headed. And I mean, who knows, in a few years, parking might look completely different than when it does today. So I'm excited that, these types of conversations are, in my opinion, paving the way for what the industry could look like.
Oh, yeah, likewise. And to our listeners, if this episode reminded you that parking isn't just about where we stop, but about how we connect, then it looks like we've done our job. Whether you're behind the booth, designing the system, or navigating the conference floor, remember that every parking space holds a story. And every story, like Courtney, brings us one step closer to a more human and a more connected world. Thanks again for riding along on Put It in Park. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and as always, keep on moving forward. Thank you.